Morning, Ralph.
Morning, Sam.
Hey, welcome back to the Morning Sam, Morning Ralph podcast. This is the podcast that we've been waiting for. When we came up with Morning Sam, Morning Ralph, it was always about getting a couple of companies together that attack a problem from a couple of different angles. So we're in for a real treat today. Scott Siegel is the co-founder and CRO of Curbit. Welcome, Scott. We have Paul Amestoy, the co-founder and chief strategist at KitchenArmor. And we're also joined by Brent Sides, who is the vice president of sales at KitchenArmor. Welcome, gentlemen. It's awesome for you to be here.
Hey, thanks for having us here. It's great.
We can go around the room a little bit and just talk a little bit about who you are and what you do for your companies. Paul, can we start with you?
Sure. So I'm a co-founder of KitchenArmor, chief strategist, and basically what we do as a company is we really focus on kitchen operations and try to streamline how kitchens work. We partner with different software vendors. We manufacture our own hardware. My job is really finding emerging technologies that we can absorb into our environment that really helps our restaurants deliver food in a timely manner. We're looking for how do we save labor, how do we increase food quality, and in the case of Curbit, how does that handoff look between the kitchen and the customers? So that's our job, is to help automate all of that process.
Terrific. Scott.
Yeah, great to be here, Paul. So yeah, Scott Siegel, co-founder, chief revenue officer for Curbit. Curbit is a capacity management solution for the restaurant industry. So what we do is we help restaurants ensure that their digital orders start at the optimal time and that their guests arrive at that ideal time so they're picking up fresh food. We interact with the technology providers that produce the signals out of the kitchen. So that's what brought us to Paul and Brent. That's my role, is working with the partners. I also work with our brands, the customers that are looking to solve this very important problem.
Awesome. And Brent, give us a little bit about what you do for KitchenArmor.
Yeah, you got it. Thanks, Paul. So I'm VP of sales. So I run sales for KitchenArmor, maintaining enterprise accounts. We also have about 40, I think we're up to about 45 dealers now. All things sales driven. And then also on the consulting side, I do a lot of consulting with business owners, operators, what their challenges are, what they're trying to accomplish in the kitchen. And then I try to put all the pieces together from a hardware standpoint, bring guys in, Curbit, Scott and his team, that really make a difference in the kitchen. And so my whole team on a sales side, they're all rock stars. They know what they're talking about. And so I just try to manage that process.
Terrific. Thanks a lot, Brent, for being here. Guys, this is a topic I think that's close to really everybody's heart. Delivery, pickup and delivery is now, it's like a cultural phenomenon with restaurants, right? There isn't anybody out there that is not ordering food either to have it delivered to their house or to pick up. The reality is that we're all attached to our phones. We want speed, we want convenience, and we also want to know that things are going to be handled the right way, right? We want to receive exactly what we ordered. We want to receive it in a timely fashion. That's what our expectations are as consumers. Now, you can say it's a modern miracle at all, just the simple fact that we can create a delivery system that within a short period of time, I can order food and I can have that sent to me. I want to give you guys a scenario. It's 12 o'clock noon. It's a busy Wednesday. I have a strong craving for Mediterranean. I want some Greek chicken salad from my favorite restaurant, but the restaurant is 6 miles away. Like I said, it's lunchtime. I'm in between meetings. I don't have a lot of time to go and order it and stand in line. So I make the order on my phone. My expectations are that when I get to the restaurant, the order is going to come out. It's going to be fresh. It isn't going to be sitting there for a long period of time, and I'm not going to be waiting around for that. Scott, I'll start with you. Talk to me about this journey that this order goes through and all the stops and starts it takes along the way to get into my hands.
Yeah, you're describing the fundamental problem of the post-COVID environment. Users have this expectation of when they order on their mobile device, they're going to have this consistent, reliable experience when they pick up. And the reality of it is, as great as that innovation is around the digital ordering and the ordering ahead experience, the problem is those channels aren't connected to the environment that's actually fulfilling the order. So that order gets cast off as soon as you hit checkout, and it's generally going to get fired right away to a point of sale. It's not going to contemplate what's happening in the kitchen. It's just going to fire right away. The point of sale is going to recognize it, and then the point of sale will then route it into the kitchen for fulfillment. The sort of the Hail Mary is you have this ordering channel that only has visibility around, call it 20, 30% of the order, when there's a lot more orders taking place on premise. And so that really distills down what the challenges that restaurant operators have is they've got guests that are expecting fresh food and not waiting and having that sort of happy handoff. But when they arrive, they're really dealing with two things. They're either waiting longer than promised, or they're picking up food that's been dwelling on a shelf and you're picking up a cold, soggy burger. That's really the origin of the problem that Curbit solved. That's how we locked on to Paul and Brent at KitchenArmor. And I think there's just a lot of great stuff that we can do together for our common customers.
So let's talk a little bit about that connective tissue between Curbit and KitchenArmor. So how are you guys, it's very clear to me what the pain points are in this problem. How is each of your technologies solving for those pain points? Paul, do you want to take a crack at that?
Yeah, I'll take a crack at that. It sounds pretty simple and very complex on the backside at the end of the day. So when we consult with our customers, we talk about what they're trying to achieve. One of the things we look at is touch points within the system, right? So if we have an automated kitchen system, we're going to process food, we're going to prioritize, we're going to highlight items that are within the food production side, make them more efficient. But from a takeout perspective, right, now it gets really complex. We don't want them to interact with the screens unless they have to. And what we want to do is incorporate their current touches to generate points of contact for Curbit. So let's say Curbit has an agent that resides on our system. Curbit will be, and Scott, interrupt if I'm wrong, right? But Curbit is going to have this agent that resides on our system that's going to be looking at all the touch points. When was a check started? When was it completed? When was it bumped? The entire process. Internally, we're printing chits. We're trying to make the cooks as efficient as possible. But at the end, it's the expectation, right? So Curbit is going to look at our speed of service. They're going to push that forward to that web ordering platform and say, no, actually, it's not 10 minutes. It's going to be more like 13 minutes. And once we start that order, hey, a busload of kids could have come up, and now all of a sudden that's not 13, it's 15, right? So this is where we expect Curbit to generate these SMS messages to the customers, telling them to slow down or speed up. Don't rush. It'll be a couple more minutes. And I think that's really the gist of what we do. We provide infrastructure for Curbit, and Curbit does their magic.
Yeah. Right. And that magic, I want to touch on that for a second, what that magic is, because to me, as the consumer, the magic is communication, right? I'm conditioned now, as we all are, as consumers, thanks to companies like FedEx and Amazon and UPS and DHL and everybody and every other delivery company out there. I know that when I purchase something and something is then shipped to me, I understand all the different stages in which that package travels and when I'm going to expect that package to fall on my front porch. And that's a great thing. And we've all seen the stats out there that consumers are about 70% more likely to buy from a company where there are communications as to when they're going to receive their package. This is particularly true for consumer packaged goods and consumer retail. So there isn't any reason why that wouldn't be so as well on the restaurant side. So Scott, can you talk a little bit about that communication? How do these communications work, and what would a typical communication look like?
Yeah, so I think just adding to what Paul was alluding to, it's the kitchen is the engine room today. That's the data. That's the source of truth. the challenge that operators and brands have today is really you have this kind of one-way street of orders going through these disparate systems, the online ordering channel to the point of sale to the kitchen. It's great because it sends the order in, but how are you communicating data out of the kitchen all the way upstream to that very important period where somebody's decided that they want to place an order from their favorite restaurant? So that's really where the Curbit value originates. It's all the way up to that first point where you go online to a website or an app for your favorite restaurant. The time that you're seeing on the screen there when you're getting ready to check out, that's powered by Curbit. And we do that through our integrations with our digital ordering providers, Olo being probably the biggest one out there on the enterprise side, but we work others like Patronics and Checkmate. Think of all the digital ordering providers that are basically feeding the orders to the point of sale. So we're updating those times, the quote times, dynamically based on the data that we're ingesting in real time in the kitchen. So we know how many burgers are on the grill, how many fries are in the basket, salads, and so on. We see that in real time. That's the first gate. So when you check out, you're going to get a quote time that reflects reality. It's not this sort of Hail Mary that users might have had experience before. But then we know things change because especially in environments where you have longer ticket times, more complex menu, the food still has to get made. And so that's the journey where we really create this alignment between the guest, the user, and that journey of the ticket as it's making its way through the kitchen. So as the order progresses, we have expectations around how fast that order should take to pass the various prep stations. So the guest gets that in real time. They get that communication via SMS when the order starts, what the promise time is. And then more importantly, if the kitchen slows down, we're transparent. We create that transparency with the user that, hey, your order's actually running behind. Maybe somebody had to leave their prep station. The guests value that. They value that communication because in the end, they want to show up. They don't want to wait. They want fresh food on time. And that's
right.
really what we're doing. We're curating this arrival. So when you show up in a parking lot, if it's a curbside order or if you're walking in to pick up, wherever that desired handoff is, you're picking up your food right as it's coming out of the kitchen. And that really is hospitality. That's delivering on the promise that you made with the guest when they checked out, that you the brand are delivering that experience. And so working with KitchenArmor, with connecting to all that data, and then through our system, that's the relationship that we can bring collectively to the brand so they give their customers a real first-class experience.
Yeah,
right.
I wanted to touch base on a little bit, if you don't mind. We were talking about communication, and we're talking about digital and all this new technology. At the end of the day, I started my career as an operator, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the first thing you were told as an operator is if the check is taking a little longer in the kitchen, you actually go to the table and tell them, excuse me, the order's taking a little longer and I want to make sure it's going to be right. At the end of the day, that's old school table touches, right? We used to call that table touch. Curbit's doing that on the digital side. Look, the customer wants to know, hey, number one, the order's in the kitchen. That's great. And number two, it's taking a little bit longer. That is the kind of communication you would expect in a restaurant that now we're taking outside the restaurant. So I just wanted to throw that in there. Those little touch points are super important to me.
Oh, absolutely. I think without question, it's that communication that is, I would say, almost hospitality, a digital hospitality.
I think too, the other thing is the communication, it doesn't just end with the guest. It also extends to the staff. It's the staff that's interacting with the screens. That's really what got us excited about our relationship and working with Brent and Paul at KitchenArmor is being able to influence what information is sent into the screen. So making sure that the orders are fired at the optimal time, making sure that when it does hit the screen, that the staff sees, what we're telling the guests. We're telling the guests when they need to pick up. Well, why not share that with the staff so they see any changes in the promise time? Being able to sort, the screens effectively. Cooks can cook. They can do their job. The front of the house can do their job, hand off great food, and the users just show up and pick up their favorite.
Let's riff on that for a second. Brent, maybe let's talk a little bit about how KitchenArmor handles those types of communications. What is the hardware or what are these screens that Scott is referencing? Are these KDS systems or what are they?
Fill in a little bit just from a sales side, how you bring this to light for a customer is, especially when we met Scott and understood what they did, they filled a huge gap, right? Paul and I have been doing this for a really long time. And prior to what Curbit does, everything was really just theoretical. There was no real rhyme or reason what time or how we're going to get this out, how to keep the food quality up without more accurate data. So that's what Curbit has really done. It's provided accurate data, not just to the customer, but it's also providing accurate data into our kitchen. So getting to what the hardware side of things and the software side is, it's a necessity, number one, but you also have to have it as a reliable source in your kitchen that your stations aren't down. And to give you some ideas, I would say let's call it traditional KDS, which used to be a Windows device with a controller, a plastic monitor, all comes with power supplies and cables all over the place, which at the end of the day, you're looking at about 20 to 24 points of failure in a traditional KDS solution.
Wow.
That's a major problem on a busy night. If you have a station go down, they're not going to call a support desk and try to troubleshoot 24 points of failure. It's going to be a tech on site that's going to have to come replace something or plug something in, right? From a hardware perspective, understanding really what the needs were for the customers is they just needed a reliable device that was built for the environment and that it was going to, sustain all of the liquids and the greases and the banging and the utensils, anything that can happen in a kitchen. KitchenArmor, obviously, as most know, it's a all-in-one stainless steel device, and it's a PoE device. We basically made an industrial, I call it an appliance versus a computer system. Or it's like any appliance in their kitchen, they can wipe it down, they can clean it. They don't have to stress about, unplugging something or anything like that. That's on the hardware side. And yeah, so with that said, with the hardware, when we look at software and who our partners are, we're really agnostic to who that may be because we understand that not all restaurants are the same. Different concepts, different kitchen, different equipment. So there is software out there that may be more reliable in one scenario and another one in a different. So we really try to stay agnostic in that area. But on the consulting side of things, we also like to know who's who and who can accomplish what for our customers. So when we're doing like a needs assessment or really trying to understand their operations, that helps us kind of point customers in the right direction. And then the last thing to say about that too is data is very important. So we also look at the order entry points. So if it's POS or if it's online ordering, what kind of data do we get that we're going to be able to manipulate in the kitchen to make things more efficient?
One of the data points that, and talking with Scott a while back, we talked a little bit about proximity data and how that might have an effect on order times. If, for example, in the scenario that I put forth in the beginning, if I'm 5 or 6 miles away, is that accounted for in the data when that's passed along that helps to determine when to start my order?
Yeah.
What kind of data?
Yeah.
What are the major data points that are required to help determine what the start time should be?
If you're talking about a customer that's ordering off premise, there's two fundamental things that will determine when that order should fire: where they're located and what the predicted ticket time is for that order. It's very simple. So from Curbit's standpoint, we're doing all the work in terms of the data extraction out of the kitchen. So we're analyzing all the events. And when I talk about events, I'm talking about every single bump that is made inside the kitchen. So we're analyzing the speed of service for every single order. We understand down to the item level how long it takes to make things effectively. So in real time, when you stated your example earlier, you place that order at 12 o'clock, we know at 12 o'clock how busy that kitchen is. And we know how long it's going to take to make that item. So if you pair that with how far away the guest is, that creates for a very intelligent ingredients in terms of informing when to fire that order into the kitchen. That's how the brands can really maximize throughput, not just firing orders in as soon as you get them. It's being intelligent about them. So you're sending them in at the right time. So they're sequenced with all the other orders that have been placed on premise.
That's wild. You know what? This is, I think, would be a good segue to talk about how what you just described, Scott. How did that work out for a common customer that you guys have? I think you guys are both working with Flanigans, right?
Yep.
So
Yep.
maybe you can describe for me, what was their problem? What was their major pain points? What did you guys go into to solve for those pain points? And what happened? What's the result?
So Flanigans, they came to us. This was in the early stages of COVID. So Flanigans was actually just table service environment, great food, American fare type stuff. But COVID really shut down the in-house dining at the time. And so they needed to really find a way to enhance their off-premise dining. So they did some research, found us online, talked with Peter Bruce and his team over there about really what they were looking to do. And they were starting this to Joe's to Go. Joe is the founder of the company, but it was Joe's to Go. And they needed something to really help them in the kitchen. So the first part of it was we were looking at QSR automations, which was the platform we really thought they needed in the kitchen. And then we brought in Curbit to help them enhance that takeout experience. So they got a crash course basically in all the technology pretty much at one time during COVID. They got kitchen automation, they got Curbit screens in the kitchen. They were used to calling out orders. So they get a ticket and they're just calling out things. But at the end of the day, what they were really looking to do is, okay, so how can we, one, get the food to the customer hot, fresh, ready to go? How can we make sure that the accuracy of the order is correct? One thing that a lot of customers, their biggest challenge when it comes to order accuracy is, are they getting the right items in the right bags, right? Just little simple things like that. Overall, at the end of the day, once all was said and done, they saw an 85% increase in efficiency and order accuracy just on their takeout business. Now, rolling forward, once COVID settled down, in-house dining came back, it was a game changer that they didn't even know would affect their in-house dining. So they started seeing the efficiency in the kitchen for in-house start to improve as well. And so they saw, I think he said it was like about a 20% increase
Wow.
in customer satisfaction and order accuracy going to the tables. So it was a real game changer for them. Scott did a wonderful job. And anytime I talk to Peter, he's always talking about what Curbit does for him in his business and the data that they pull out of that system, and just to see the improvements time over time as things get better. It's pretty incredible.
Wow, that's incredible. Maybe I want to explore this just a little bit further, because with regard to metrics, and we don't have to talk about specifically about Flanigan's metrics or any company's metrics, although I know that you do have some ones that are publicly stated out there. But what are the kinds of success metrics that we're actually looking at? Scott, so is it time to pick up? What are the core metrics that you're measuring to show and demonstrate success?
Yeah, it's very straightforward. It's order timing. So we call it improvement in timing accuracy. That is the time that you told somebody to arrive compared to when the order was actually completed. We see and Brent alluded to that with Flanigan's, 85% improvement in order timing. It's substantial. It sounds like almost an unreal number. But every customer that we work with, when they share their data with us, and the first part of our sales process is to put up on a screen and show them, this is your problem. These are your ticket times. Yeah, these are the ticket times, your average ticket times. This is what you're telling the guests. Everyone knows they have the problem. They could see it. They could see the bags of food. They could see the crowded lobbies. They're dealing with the noise. But when you put it on a screen for them and you show them how inaccurate,
and it becomes empirical.
Yeah,
right?
You have this digital ordering system that is essentially creating this problem. And so we come in very quickly. We show them, hey, you turn this switch on. This is the improvement you're going to experience immediately. So that's really the first one. And then obviously the guest satisfaction. So when we work with brands early on, we do two things. We show them that improvement in order timing, and then we show them the improvement in guest satisfaction. I think Flanigan is a great example on a number of fronts. One, I think when we first started, they used to share with us all the kind of the negative complaints they were getting. This is just when we were just getting baseline data. They were forwarding all of them to us, just food sitting, I'm waiting, on and on. We would get like 20 of them probably a day. To this day, they don't send us any complaints. We don't see any of them. So it's a great representation of the impact that we can have. But I think just going back to Flanigans, and it's such a great example of what KitchenArmor, their approach to selling. It really is, they really are a solution seller, identifying not just one problem in an operation, but looking at it like globally, and how can they pull in these different partners, in our case, Curbit, to solve a real problem. And I think that example of coming out of COVID, working off of receipts in the kitchen, no automation, no communication, how they quickly pivoted to put really a best-in-class system in place. We hear a lot about Starbucks today. They're really dealing with the realities of that problem. If you can't have baristas walking around with sticky receipts trying to figure out what to make and how to prioritize things, it just doesn't work.
Yeah, and I want to touch a little bit about touch points and a little bit what Brent and I do. We have a lot of credibility in the industry when we start talking to our customers. We have operations background. Brent used to own a restaurant and I used to manage restaurants. The typical example would be the typical manager would say, I don't want my cooks to touch the screen. And then we're going to ask them stuff like, do you want accurate timing for takeout? Oh yeah, I do. That first touch might be super important, right? Because we want to start an order. And that information gets back to Curbit. So for instance, if I have 20 items on a screen and I haven't yet started them, that's important to know, because it's not just when does the order get to the kitchen, when the cook started, because that affects everything downstream, right? So that kind of data is the data that we send to Curbit. But without that kind of interaction, then no matter how good Curbit is, if they're not getting proper data, it's not going to help them in the long run. So it's our job at KitchenArmor to make sure we educate our customers on how a kitchen flow ought to be, so we can look downstream and say, hey, this is going to help you with takeout.
Yeah, typically what we like to do, and we're not one of those companies that just answers RFPs and does any of that. We are 100% a consulting company. Yes, we're a manufacturer of hardware and things like that, but when it comes to the solution, we have to really understand the needs. What are your pain points? What are you trying to accomplish? Where do you see this happening? Are you doing 10 stores? Or are you guys going to do 1,000 stores? You got to look at everything in a holistic view.
Right.
And then at the same time, like I said earlier, is when you're really picking a technology stack, you don't want to just basically say, I've heard great things about this, when you don't really know anything about it. And it may be great for somebody, but it may not be great for somebody else. So what we do is we try to decide, one, hardware is one aspect of it, but we also want to learn this table service environment. What type of food are they making? What equipment, are they using? How does their operations, entirely work? And then you get those pain points. So we like to pick and choose. And like I said, we're agnostic. We do sell QSR. So QSR is always a big point of our sales process. But at the same time, I'm very transparent.
You're saying QSR automations.
Automations, yes.
Right.
QSR automations, we're a reseller for those guys. So we do a lot with them, but at the same time, like I said, with customers, we're very transparent. If we think there's a better solution for them, software-wise in the kitchen, we're going to point them in that direction versus us trying to just make the sale. And then finding those gaps. Like I said, Curbit just fills a huge gap. So if we're dealing with a table service environment, they don't do much takeout at all. I'm probably going to call Scott and say, hey, I want to introduce you to these guys.
I'd love to learn a little bit more about how you guys even connected. Because, listen, KitchenArmor clearly, as a consultancy on top of a premier hardware manufacturer, clearly you guys have a tremendous brand, and there's a lot of equity in that brand. And when you're recommending different technologies to clients, you really have to be bought in. So can you tell me a little bit about how you guys connected? Paul, do you want to take that? Or maybe Scott. Yeah,
Scott,
somebody.
you take it. I forgot how we connect. I just
Yeah.
knew
Yeah.
we
Do you
had this
remember,
gap,
Paul?
and I
No,
think they
I
kind of dropped in
remember.
our lap.
Yeah.
Oh my God, this is
Right.
great.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah. When you're anyone that has a startup company, you're just always, you're looking for that like first break, the first customer or the first relationship. There's always these sort of milestones or junctions that you're looking to break through. And for us, it was meeting Paul for the first time. We had built a beta of the Curbit system back in, this was 2022, 2023, that we had developed with another customer. It was very kind of an arduous system that really wasn't what it is today. We met through another customer of ours. It's called Takeout. It's a Southern California based company. They wanted to do basic text messaging at the time. This was again 2022, 23, communicating guest progress of the order. And so we had to integrate with their systems. We're a young company. No one knows who we are. For us to do what we have to do, we have to integrate with the systems. And so the system that we needed to integrate in the kitchen was QSR automations. And so we had I'll never forget our very first call with Paul, because Paul was the reseller. And it was just like jaw dropped on the ground, because not only did he articulate the capabilities that we could then introduce into our product vis-a-vis all the webhooks and APIs that are available through QSR, but Paul just had this like kind of light bulb go off on his head that, wow, Curbit can solve a problem for his customers. And so that really set in motion our relationship that I just cannot be expressed gratitude towards in terms of our relationship with Paul and the KitchenArmor team, that they are really thinking about how they can solve problems for their customers. And often that problem is solved by Curbit. One funny story though, I had a lot of these conversations are done over the phone. And it's just, I wanted to meet Paul in person. And I'll never forget at our first FS Tech, which is timely because it's coming up as of the recording here next week. This was 2021. I think this was 3 years ago, our very first show. We were stuck in the corner. And I remember kept trying to find Paul because I wanted to meet him in person. And at these shows, Paul's like the mayor of restaurant tech. Every time you see him, he's just kind of engulfed circled by 3 or 4 others. And first day, couldn't get to him. Second day, couldn't get to him. Third day, literally, we're just breaking down the conference. And Paul finally took enough time to walk over and meet with, at the time, it was myself and other co-founder, Kevin, and just shook his hand. And that's really what set in motion this really great relationship.
Yeah,
awesome.
It is. And look, at the end of the day, all of our team really wants the best for our customers. And it's not just the timing, it's the quality of the food at the time. So I think without Curbit, what we were seeing, I'm going to use Olo as an example, you come up with some weird little algorithm, X amount of orders times X amount of time, and this is how it works. It's going to take you 15 minutes, 20 minutes during lunch. I have no idea. Most of these managers set up these systems so that when the customer comes in, the food is ready, right? But that doesn't mean that when they get home, the food quality is right. If they made that food 10 minutes or 12 minutes or 15 minutes ahead of time, by the time they might be happy they picked up the food because it was there. But at the end of the day, that experience is horrible, right? And if you I like to compare takeout with in-house, same thing, right? There's no difference. When was the last time you saw a restaurant manager at a pass up bar say, oh, don't run that food out. We'll run it in 15, 20 minutes, right? They get fired. You never do that. But yet we allow that to happen in takeout. So when someone like Curbit comes along, wow, I could solve this problem. This is a huge problem for us. That was totally refreshing. And working with Curbit and the team, if there is problems, and there are problems, this is technology, API issues, bump data issues that they're not getting, they have been so receptive, really receptive to fixing the problems. And again, that's on us, right? If we recommend this customer to Curbit and they're not providing what we need, it makes us look bad. Curbit has never made us look bad.
Right.
Yeah.
No. Wow. That's great to hear.
Yeah.
So let's.
We are recording this part.
We are recording. That was recorded.
Okay.
Hey, fellas, let's take a quick break, and when we get back, I just want to hear a little bit more about how all of these integrations work, right? Because you just can't run a restaurant anymore without technology playing well with each other. So we'll be back in 2 seconds.
So KitchenArmor brought to our attention the enhancement of Curbit, which is a real-time customer order accuracy integrator. The information that is fed back and forth gives us real-time updates as to exactly where the order is sitting. So if our kitchens are working more effectively and quicker through the system, our customer is then given an update, letting them know that, hey, good news, your order is moving faster than anticipated originally. If our kitchens are slowed down, it will let the customer know, unfortunately, your order is running a little behind. Your new quote time is now going to be this. Forming that relationship and having that understanding to get through all of the roadblocks and create the enhancements that they helped us do was a phenomenal partnership. To this day, we are continually making improvements. I couldn't say enough great things about KitchenArmor. Their partnership with us has been stellar since day one, and I would highly recommend getting KitchenArmor into your kitchens as well.
All right, fellas, welcome back. We're back with Morning Sam, Morning Ralph, and I'm talking here with Paul Amestoy of KitchenArmor and Brent Sides of KitchenArmor and Scott Siegel of Curbit. And it's a great conversation because these guys are solving for a problem that so many restaurants have, but on top of that, just the general population has, and that is ordering food that meets your expectations. Fellas, how does all of this work? What are the integrations required? I'm a restaurant. I have 5, 10, 15 locations. I do takeout and delivery. I have a problem, especially during busy times. I'm starting to feel it in customer feedback. I can see that there's a problem. How do I solve this? What do I need to do? Anybody want to take a shot at that?
So typically, a customer will call us, right? Or what will typically happen is they will see our products at their competitor. These restaurants, they're always going out to events, and they start talking about it. We end up getting a call. The first thing they'll say is, "Oh, I want the same system as XYZ," right? And our goal is to say, no, we don't know what you need yet. Let's talk about it. Let's work in your restaurant. Let's understand your needs and understand your pain points, and let's go at it from there. Brent and the sales team are great at that. They've been doing it for so long. And that has a big impact on the final product, right? Understanding the customer's needs, listening to what they have to say, watching what they do. Most people don't do that, right? They just listen to the customer. Okay, fine. We'll write you the same program as them. Here's the dollar amount. Sign the deal. We'll get it going. But at the end, that probably isn't going to solve the problem. In the case of Curbit, in the case of Takeout, not only does Curbit need to give the customer the right expectation and do a lot of that signaling, but we also have to do the packaging. We also have to highlight the orders. We have to make sure that the items that get in the bag are the right items that get in that bag. And so there's a lot of moving parts to all of that, right? And what's been wonderful with Curbit, and we said we weren't going to do this and not get too techie, but what's really great is, let's say, for instance, with Aloha. Aloha has great input to us. If we're using QSR, for instance, we get a lot of stuff, but the one thing we don't get is promise time. Aloha doesn't send us promise time. In the case of Curbit, they actually inject in the kitchen system promise time based on what they have said to the customer and based on what the expectation is. That's a game changer for an Aloha customer, right? So those are the kind of things that we look at. And now I'm going to stop talking because otherwise I'll get too much into the technology and boring. Don't want to do that.
All is the way I look at it is you can't go to a doctor and get a prescription, right? You just can't say, hey, I want this drug. So that's the way we look at it is we've got to do the diagnosis first. So we got to really understand what's happening. What are your pain points? What are your needs? How does your operation go?
What's your existing tech stack, for example, right?
Existing tech stack. And there may be in order to get the function you really want, you may need a different combination and you may have to change POS. A lot of people don't want to do that, but that is the nice thing about certain functionalities in the kitchen. We can at least make some changes on our side that can accommodate those things even outside of the POS, especially with Curbit, like Paul just said. Promise time is a huge thing, but you'd be amazed at how many POS companies don't send you that, or even a cook time for a piece of chicken. You know what I mean? So there's a lot of required data that we look at.
All right. This has been awesome. Guys, I can find KitchenArmor at kitchenarmor.com. I certainly find you on LinkedIn. All of the link, Curbit naturally, curbit.com. I'll put all the links in the show description. This has been an awesome conversation, guys. Learned a lot today. I'm sure our listeners have learned a lot as well. Hey, thanks for being on the pod.
Thanks.
Hey,
Paul.
Paul, thanks for
Appreciate it.
inviting us.
Thanks, guys.
This has been fun. Let's do it again.
Good. Cheers. All
Okay,
right,
guys.
fellas. Take care. Have a good time.
All right.
All right. Thanks, everyone.